I like that. I really do. I really do.
Yep.
Theme it. Well, isn't it breast cancer awareness?
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
Did you say Boogaloo is? I was thinking. Oh, I
Yeah.
I thought you said like the St. Croix Posse people. Juggalos.
All right.
No,
Good
yeah,
evening.
those are different.
Welcome to the Town Hall Council
Maybe not.
Chamber. I don't know why all y'all are here. I'm just kidding. I know we got to make some big decisions tonight, and I want to go ahead and call the meeting to order. The Apex Town Council regular scheduled meeting for Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. And before we get to business, we want to start with an invocation. And faith continues to be a tradition here in our community. Provides hope, love, unity, and goodwill. And we do recognize that diversity and inclusion is a priority for our town. And we also recognize we don't practice the same faith traditions, but that's okay. We're still one community. So with this, we're going to have a presentation tonight, and you're welcome to have a moment of silence during this time if you desire. But I would like to call up Shamir with the Apex chapter of Hindu Swayamsevik song. If you would come up, please, and make your presentation for our invocation.
Namaste everyone. On behalf of Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh, also known as HSS, I wish everyone a very happy Diwali and Raksha Bandhan. HSS is a non-profit, educational, social and cultural volunteer organization of the Hindus living outside of India. We have presence across the US and around the globe. October month has been declared as Hindu Heritage Month in North Carolina by Honorable Governor Roy Cooper, and it's a matter of great pride for the Indian American community. It's an honor for us to be invited here today and observe the festival of Raksha Bandhan with community leaders. Thank you very much. The word originates from Sanskrit. It translates to bond of protection. The word Raksha means protection, whilst the word Bandhan refers to tying the knot. Traditionally, during the festival, we tie a rakhi or a bracelet on the right wrist. This is celebrated in the month of August. It gives us an opportunity to meet community leaders like you all, to express our gratitude, say thank you for protecting us, and also give us an opportunity to say thank you very much. Dhanyavad.
Thank you so much.
I now ask my team of volunteers to tie the rakhis, please.
All right, so we're going to all stand up in here and.
two lines. Yeah, just a little bit. Y'all can just kind of, yeah, just. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hold tight. All right, thank you.
And I do want to acknowledge our DEI Director, Ms. Linda Jones. Thank you for coordinating that for us tonight. Thank you, ma'am.
Also the help of Alan Cole.
And Alan Coleman, thank you. Appreciate it, sir. Thank you. All right, we'll now move to our consent agenda. All consent agenda items are considered routine.
Pledge first.
Oh, exactly, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. Before we do that, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. It's good to have my back. I appreciate that. All right, again, we move into consent agenda, and all consent agenda items are considered routine to be enacted by one motion with the adoption of the consent agenda and without discussion. If a council member requests discussion of an item, the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. And council, you have the consent agenda in front of you, printed. Are there any changes? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion, Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passed unanimously. All right, we move now to setting of the regular meeting agenda. And I will make note that public hearing number 3 will be continued once we get to that section of the agenda tonight. So if you're here for public hearing 3, it will be continued to another date. So with that, you have the meeting agenda in front. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right. Motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passed unanimously. We have a set meeting agenda. We'll move now to a public forum. This is opportunity for community members to speak. You have 3 minutes to speak tonight. Anything you want to talk about, any suggestions, recommendations, concerns, anything we need to improve on, this is your opportunity. And we'll open it up tonight and start with our first presenter, Elizabeth Stitt. If you would, please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Hello, Elizabeth Stitt, 3113 Friendship Road. You have another handout. I'm going to get good at these handouts for you guys. Obviously, I'm here to talk about the traffic that's on Old One and Friendship Road and our need to get turning lanes. And what I did this time was went back and pulled up the maps from the TIAs. So you'll see on the first page here, since 2016, 4,331 homes, 3 schools, and over 100,000 square feet of commercial space have been approved along the corridor of Old Use 1 from 540 towards New Hill. So in 2018, when they did the traffic study for Pleasant Plains Park, they rated our intersection as going to be an F, which is the lowest level of service you can get. And then if you look at the traffic studies from Holland Road Mixed Use Assembly and Sears PUD, which were done in 2021, our intersection again is rated an F. So any one of these projects by themselves was going to take our intersection to an F. If you have 3 of these projects, it's a triple F. So when we talk about the town having a vision called Vision Zero, where we want to avoid some of these issues, we have the opportunity to do the turn lanes. So I just wanted to make sure I pulled forward the traffic studies, because I know when you guys look at your agendas, they're like 500-600 pages for every meeting, and sometimes this stuff gets lost in between. So I wanted to put it on top. But the most important thing that I wanted to call out is if you look at the traffic counts from 2018 to 2021, they've increased 31% without these projects. So the growth of traffic in our area is going much faster than what people understand. And I think my neighbors and I were tired of playing chicken because when we try to turn out, we cannot turn out. The timing of the signal at Hume Olive and Old One, there's not enough time that when Hume Olive turns, as soon as they stop, you got Old One coming in. So this past week, we had one car in the ditch on the side, and we had another car into one of my neighbors' houses. I'm waiting for those police reports, and I'll share those out, but this is getting dangerous. So we'd like for you guys to pull up the timeline on these turn lanes. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Stett. All right, Veronica Pacheco.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
This was my dog, Austin, but he got run over in the intersection of Richardson Road and Hayes. I was heading to the dog park on September 6th, like I usually do. We took off from the house at 6:51 p.m. and Austin was able to say bye to my husband. My husband petted Austin as we headed to the dog park, and not realizing that was the last time he would see him alive. The dog park does not have the double doors, so as another dog was entering, a couple of dogs escaped from the dog park, and Austin crossed the street. There was a guy in a Jeep Gladiator that was texting and driving and speeding. The speed limit is 45, and he was at least going 50. As people were, oh, by the way, he had a child and a dog in the back seat of his Jeep Gladiator, so one would assume that he would be more responsible and pay attention. There was people jumping the fence, everybody running and screaming, "Austin here," trying to get my dog's attention. We took him to the emergency room, but he died, so they tried to revive him. There's been a couple of incidents that have occurred in that street. Half a block from there on the crosswalk, there was a little girl that was struck by a car while she was on her bike and on the crosswalk. Thankfully, she survived. Austin's best friend, Lolo, John's dog, was struck a month after Austin was killed. Thankfully, he also survived because the lady was driving about 25 miles an hour. So I imagine someone here has a pet or a child living in your home, and if you could find it in your heart to help us to prevent a tragedy from happening again, and to help our neighborhood be safer and to help save a life. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pacheco.
That was Austin.
And our love and support to you.
Thank you.
All right, next is Randy Gupta.
Good evening. I orchestrated in our community, by the way, there's 900 homes that are complete off Richardson between 64 and Olive Chapel. The speed limit now is 45 miles an hour. When we moved here 3 years ago, everybody always thought it should be like 25 or 35. But with all the construction, there's the new Sweetwater Town Center coming up, it still is 45 miles an hour. So our goal is here to see if we can get a study for that street to have a safer speed limit for the community. Because like Veronica shared, and with Lolo's story, and I participate at the dog park, actually witnessed him die. And seeing his face crushed was no fun sight. So excuse me if I'm a little, upset about it. But the point is, between Where he was at was in the middle of 64 and Olive Chapel on heading westbound from the community park in a townhome area where there's 63 homes. But along there, the plan within the next 12 months, because Lennar is building there, Linden is building more homes, completion, there will be 1,600 homes that have access to this 1.5 mile street, again, Richardson, south of 64 and north of Olive Chapel. So my other friend from the community is also going to be sharing some points that we would like to drive home with you. Thank you for your time.
I really appreciate you presenting that tonight. Thank you. Ashley Solis.
Hello. Forgive me, I'm not a good public speaker. This is way outside my comfort zone. I live in Sweetwater. I was also there when Austin was killed. It was extremely traumatic for everyone that was there. I have a petition here with over 1,064 signatures. 95+% is from Apex residents. Right now, Sweetwater is developing their commercial side. What I don't think has been taken into account is the amount of pedestrian traffic that is going to happen. We have 240 apartments. They're doing an outdoor amphitheater, and it is dangerous on a good day. Like I said, we've had a dog killed, a dog struck, and a girl, a small child, hit in the crosswalk. So we're just trying to prevent a tragedy from taking place. I feel that right now there are 5 parks that are directly on Richardson in the different neighborhoods. So that's 5 chances of kids kicking a ball or a dog getting out. We're asking not only to reduce the speed limit, but also increase signage. I have everything written down, so if I don't get to it, it's on here. Also, a 4-way stop on Hasse and Richardson. At night, there's not very good lighting over there. And that is also a major area where people are coming on and off the American Tobacco Trail, so it's dangerous. I've seen people go around buses. There are 7 to 10 bus stops between the elementary, middle, and high schools right on Richardson. Something bad is going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And I feel like the level of liability for the city is getting higher the more incidents are being discussed, the more things are happening. And we just are trying to prevent. The dog was bad enough, but I can't imagine if a child got hit or anything else happened. It's very serious, and we hope that you take it seriously and look over the materials. If you have any questions, let me know. I appreciate you taking the time to listen and take it seriously. I know we've already agreed to do a speed study of the area, but I really feel pedestrian traffic is what needs to be looked into as well. So that's it. And again, if you have any questions, my contact information is up.
All right, first of all, Ashley, you did a good job. Thank you. And just let all of you know who presented tonight, we hear you. And it will be passed on. Manager Crosby will be reaching out to you. Thank you so much. All right, that closes out public forum time for tonight. We move now to public hearings. We have public hearing 1, Transportation Plan Amendments, Chapel Ridge, 22 CZ07, combined with public hearing 2, rezoning case number 22 CZ07, Chapel Ridge, North Pud. Shannon Cox.
Good evening. The public hearing for the transportation plan amendments tonight is associated with the next item on your agenda, the rezoning case for 22 CZ07. So as is your typical practice, I will present the transportation plan amendments, hold that public hearing, and then your vote would occur after the second public hearing. All of the amendments this evening are along Chapel Ridge Road between Olive Chapel Road and Beaver Creek Commons Drive. there's 3 amendments for the 3 maps that make up our transportation plan. The first proposed amendment is to the Thoroughfare and Collector Street Plan map, and that is to add a future minor collector street along Chapel Ridge Road from its terminus along a new alignment up to Beaver Creek Commons Drive. Associated with that, there's a second amendment to remove the future minor collector designation from existing Ackerman Hill Drive. The road would stay there. It's just clarifying that the collector street would be along Chapel Ridge Road. The second proposed amendment is to the bicycle and pedestrian system plan map. This change would add a future side path along Chapel Ridge Road. This location is where the town's project, the northern boundary of the town's project that's already been approved. So from here to the north up to Beaver Creek Commons Drive. Where we designate a side path on our map, that's indicating that there would be a 10-foot wide pedestrian facility, typically asphalt. If we don't have that designation, there would be a 5-foot sidewalk. And then the last proposed amendment is to the transit plan map. You can see the current Go Apex Route 1 route is shown in green and white. Currently, it makes a turn within the Olive Chapel Professional Park. The proposed amendment is to designate Chapel Ridge Road, including the future extension, as a future local bus route. The intent would be that Go Apex Route 1, when this is constructed, would make a turn down Chapel Ridge Road and then loop around using only public streets instead of the private property that we're currently using. Planning staff are supportive of the proposed amendments. They offer multimodal connectivity. Connectivity is an important aspect of our transportation plan. It shortens travel times, reduces pressure on intersections, reduces congestion on thoroughfares, and provides more opportunities for people to walk, bike, or ride buses instead of their own personal vehicles. These amendments were also reviewed with staff from Transportation, Fire, Police, and Parks, Rec, and Cultural Resources, and they were also supportive of the proposed amendments. The Transit Advisory Committee reviewed the proposed transit plan map amendment on July 13th, 2022, and unanimously recommended approval. And then finally, the Planning Board considered these amendments at their July 11th, 2022 meeting, and also recommended approval in a vote of 4 in favor and 2 opposed. I do want to note that the transportation plan map amendments did not go back for a second public hearing to the Planning Board, since that public hearing was closed and the amendments were not changed. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Can you define minor collector? What that means?
So minor collector is our lowest collector street designation. So we would anticipate more traffic than along your typical residential street. Oftentimes it's connecting a thoroughfare with another collector, major collector, or 2 major collector streets. We require a minimum of sidewalk on both sides of minor collector streets and 60 feet of right-of-way. Your typical residential street has 50 feet of right-of-way and a minimum of sidewalk on one side.
And would there typically be no driveways if there were single-family homes, no driveways?
Minor collector streets, single-family driveways are permissible.
Are permissible, okay.
Major collector streets, they're not.
Okay. That's it, thanks.
And I was going to ask, is there a proposed plan for a bus stop on Chapel Ridge?
So Shelley will share the proposed zoning conditions, which do include a bus stop as part of that rezoning case.
And can you confirm, I think I read that the townhomes, even though they weren't required to, they were approved with at least an 8-foot side path all the way down to Olive Chapel?
I believe that they were approved with a 5-foot sidewalk. we have to, thank you, Shelley.
Oh,
Yeah.
they didn't?
Um,
Were you able to get that? Okay.
Yeah, so that was approved prior to this case coming before us.
Okay.
All right, other questions for Ms. Cox? Thank you so
Thank you.
much. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing for comment on this item. And we have one speaker signed up, Rita Boykin. If you would come up, please.
Good evening. My name is Rita Boykin. Ray and I live at 1500 Clark Farm Road in Apex. I come before you this evening in opposition to the transportation amendment that would allow Chapel Ridge Road to be included in Apex's bus transit route. I'm opposed to a bus traveling through my neighborhood 6 days a week from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., which is 16 times a day. I find it the following issues concerning: that this amendment is being presented before the Chapel Ridge PUD proposal this evening, that this amendment is even tied to that proposal, that because the bus route loses its lease at the office park in 5 years, Apex seeks to solve their problem at the expense of our neighborhood. I'm concerned that Chapel Ridge Road is the only minor collector street on this route, yet Apex wants it to be added to the bus route. That Apex feels this is necessary when the ridership is currently at low levels. During the month of August, the average number of riders per hour was 3. In September, 2.5. I'm concerned that Apex believes the bus stop at Tuesday morning is not sufficient to meet the needs for any potential riders from the Chapel Ridge North Apartments if said project is approved. That bus stop has a shelter and a bike rack. It's doubtful that a new bus stop would have those features. And I'm concerned that Apex pushed the developer into adding a bus stop to their project in order to justify this transportation amendment. At the very least, if the Chapel Ridge North PUD proposal does come to pass, this transportation amendment should not be implemented until all of Chapel Ridge has been redeveloped. That includes the remaining homes in Chapel Ridge. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and close public hearing comment now and move to Ms. Mayo.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
As Shannon so wonderfully introduced already, before you is rezoning case 22CZ07, Chapel Ridge North PUD. You're very familiar with this. You've already seen it once, but I'm just going to give you some highlights real quick. This project was heard by the board in July and continued to the September 13th meeting with the following concerns. The exclusion of the Bishop property created a hole in the project and in the neighborhood. There wasn't enough communication with the adjacent residents, and the Sherry property was requested to remain as a single-family home in order to minimize the disturbance to the adjacent neighbors. In the meantime, the developer has heard you and has made some changes. Those changes required the project to go back through the full planning board town council process, which is why you're hearing this now instead of in September. The three biggest changes, there are others, but the three biggest ones were that they added the Bishop property to the rezoning, which increased it by a little over 2 acres. They changed the Sherry property to single-family residential, and they held 2 new neighborhood meetings with the neighbors. One of those met our UDO standards. The other one was simply informational to speak with the residents. So those neighborhood meeting reports are in your staff report. Those are the 3 big changes, but I'm going to briefly go over the rest of it just to remind you. It's been a couple months, and I know my memory isn't that great, so I'm going to give us all the highlight reel. As a quick overview, the project is located just east of 540 and south of 64. It is just south of the Beaver Creek Shopping Center, and to the east are townhomes, the Hempstead subdivision, and to the west is the future home of Jordan Lutheran Church. As you can see by the site, the parcels are large lots. They range between 1.7 and 5¼ acres. They're mostly wooded with some large cleared areas and good-sized single-family homes. They're currently zoned rural residential, and the applicant is proposing to rezone them to planned unit development conditional zoning. The 2045 land use map currently designates the area as medium-density residential. Medium density permits 3 to 7 dwelling units per acre and does not permit apartments. Chapel Ridge North is proposing 371 dwelling units on their 22.7 acres, or approximately 16.3 units per acre. If the rezoning is approved, the land use map will automatically be changed to high-density residential, which has a minimum density of 14 units per acre for planned unit developments. This property it's a little difficult to see, but it is in the brown, immediately adjacent to one of our blue transit-oriented development areas. Transit-oriented development typically dictates a transit supportive density, which is at least 7 units per acre for a circulator bus and at least 15 units per acre for fixed route bus service. In 2021, staff presented a land use map amendment for this area, which would have changed the entire Chapel Ridge neighborhood to medium-high and high-density residential. During their meeting, Planning Board unanimously recommended approval of the changes that were proposed at the time. When the proposal came to Town Council, it was sent back to the Planning Committee based on resident concerns. Planning Committee then decided to wait on the land use map change until a zoning petition was presented and to decide based on the merits of that particular zoning proposal. Staff feels that this area is appropriate for medium-high and high-density residential because of its nature as infill. It's also very close to 540 and 64 and local retail and offices. Planning staff tends to promote infill whenever possible because it reduces the costs that the town has to pay to build and maintain public roads, utilities, and other infrastructure while reducing our impacts to natural areas on the outskirts of town. The compact nature of this development further reduces our town costs, and the development's proximity to 540 and 64 make it simple to access regional highways, while the location near Greenways, Beaver Creek Crossing Shopping Center, and the town's new transit route should reduce the length, distance, and frequency of vehicle trips for future residents. The addition of a side path to connect to Beaver Creek Commons Drive should also encourage residents to walk between the two developments. This is the existing conditions. There are several large trees identified as well as the single-family residences on it. Since the planning board meeting, additional changes have been made. Since your last meeting, rather, not since planning board, since your last meeting. In addition to adding the Bishop property and changing the Sherry property's designation to single-family residential here, the developers also agreed to provide a sewer stub and a water stub to the eastern property line of Jordan Lutheran Church. They've also agreed to work with Jordan Lutheran Church to drain the existing pond that's on their shared property line. This is due to concerns about liability and potential for small children to fall in. In addition, they've added the following conditions. No dumpster shall be located within 50 feet of the northern property line of either the Corey property, which is south of Parcel C, or the Sereno property, which is just across the street. A 6-foot-tall fence shall also be provided along the southern-facing property line adjacent to the Corey, Sereno, and Brea property lines. Any buildings that are located in Area C on the concept plan will be limited to a maximum of 3 stories, And no buffer will be required between the single-family parcels. This is purely to make certain that there's not a required buffer that has to be placed on the Sherry property. If that's not specified in the zoning, then it means the developer will be required to install a 10-foot buffer between existing lots. In addition, they are providing a 5-foot sidewalk along both the north and south side of Ackerman Drive. Previously, it had only been provided along the south side because they didn't have frontage on Ackerman Drive on the north side. As I stated at our last meeting, a letter of impact from Wake County Public School System was received for the rezoning. This letter indicates that elementary and high schools within the current assignment area will not have sufficient capacity for future students. However, transportation to schools outside of the current assignment area should be anticipated. However, school expansion or construction within the next 5 years may address concerns at both the elementary school and the high school levels. The applicant has offered our standard architectural conditions, and these are the elevations that they've suggested and proposed. These elevations were chosen to attempt to blend with the modern farmhouse style that is so frequently found in Apex. In addition, just to give you a couple more of those highlights, the applicant is proposing that at least 3.5% of the total units shall be designated as affordable housing for 10 years. The affordable units will be occupied by households earning no more than 60% of the Raleigh AMI. The project is also proposed to use full cutoff LED fixtures with a maximum color temperature of 3,500 Kelvin for all lighting. That's that warm yellow, not that glaring blue color. The project is also stated that the buildings will be designed to meet the requirements of one of the green building certification options listed in your staff report. They shall install at least 3 pet waste stations, and all buildings shall be built with conduit for future solar panels. In addition, they've proposed a minimum of 5% of the total parking spaces shall be electric vehicle charging spaces. This is exceeding the UDO's requirement of 3%, so going above and beyond. The proposed development is in compliance with the UDO to dedicate 20% of the development as RCA. The proposed buffers meet or exceed the minimum required by the UDO. Most have been upgraded to a type A buffer and increased by at least 5 feet. In addition, the applicant added several native species and landscaping conditions that were requested by the town's Environmental Advisory Board. They've agreed to a condition that says that existing trees greater than 18 inches in diameter that are removed by site development will be replaced by planting a replacement tree either on-site or an alternative location. They've also upgraded the required stormwater on this site. Typically, they would only be required to treat the 10-year storm. They've increased that to the 25-year storm. And then to give you an idea of the road and pedestrian facilities that they'll be proposing, there's a 10-foot future side path that Shannon just addressed, shown along the northern and eastern sides in this yellow line of Chapel Ridge Road. On the opposite side of the street will be a 5-foot sidewalk along Chapel Ridge facing the right-of-way fronting the development. There'll also be a 5-foot sidewalk on both sides of Ackerman Drive. Shannon's already done an excellent job of discussing the changes to the bus ridership and the proposed bus plan. I will confirm that there will be a bus stop installed by the developer. And they'll be building that connection to Beaver Creek Commons Drive, which will be a significant benefit to the traffic in the area. The Environmental Advisory Board met with the applicant on February 17th, 2002, and all but 2 of their conditions were added by the applicant. Those 2 were implementing green infrastructure and adding solar power to the roof of the building. Both of those, the developers informed me they're still working on and they would still be interested in doing. They're just not ready to commit to a zoning condition at this point because they don't have their buildings fully designed yet. Planning Board held their most recent public hearing last Monday on the 10th. At that meeting, there was a vote or a motion to recommend approval. Unfortunately, the vote tied and we had no tiebreaker, so it failed for lack of enough support. So no recommendation was made. Planning staff recommends approval as proposed by the applicants. We think it's reasonable and in the public interest because it will provide infill redevelopment that services a transition from the large commercial development to the north while being compatible with the scale of the townhome development to the east. The rezoning will also require more energy efficient housing, improve local transit options, and offer affordable housing units. The proximity to large shopping centers, bus stops, and greenways will encourage residents to walk, bike, or take transit to local destinations, and the proximity to local regional highways will provide easy access to that network, reducing the impacts of a similar amount of traffic on our local street network. The compact nature of the proposed development also lowers the town's costs per capita, maintaining public goods and infrastructure while also protecting open space in the town. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. The applicant is also here and is happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Mayo. Any questions for Ms. Mayo?
Yeah, I had one. If this was still medium density and it got built out as similar medium densities have been in Apex, would that trigger the need for the road, extra road connection? And if not, if the whole development, if the whole neighborhood developed that way, would that trigger the need for the road to connect to Beaver Creek Commons?
When this was first proposed, the answer was definitely yes.
It would trigger it?
It would.
Okay.
Since we have approved Chapel Ridge South, there's been the proposed addition of an additional road across from the neighborhood to the south. Until that's built, yes, technically.
Oh.
After that's built, it's possible. Staff would have to go back through and recount the number of units, so I can't give you an exact answer at this point.
Okay.
If it was built out at 7 units per acre, which is the maximum.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? All right, thank you. We'll hear from the applicant at this time.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm Jamie Schwadler with Parker Poe at 31 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, High Street Residential. We also have members of our team who are here with me tonight, Matthew Carpenter, as well as members of the Kimley Horn and McAdams teams who worked very hard on this proposal over these many months, most of the balance of this year. And they're available for questions. Shelley did a great job in summarizing this, and I don't want to rehash the points that she made, but I'd just like to highlight the changes that were made since we were before you in July. And when we were before you in July, we heard 3 distinct requests that were made to explore whether this whole development could be made more holistic and kind of embrace the changes that Apex was facing. And those were including the Bishop property, designating the Sherry property as single family, and meeting again with the neighbors to see whether we could incorporate their requests and make changes to the plan that make these the transitions more palatable. We did meet with the Chapel Ridge neighbors twice in August, once immediately after the July 26th hearing, and then again when we had enough time to mail notice per the town's request. And we announced at that time that we had the Bishop property under contract, that we intended to make the changes to the Sherry property and file a PUD amendment, and wanted to hear any type of actionable changes that they wanted us to make to the proposal. And we had two very productive meetings. We talked a lot about how we could incorporate other mitigation measures that we hadn't already made, and what we could do in addition. And we're able to file the PUD in late August with those changes made. And those changes are summarized here. And the reason we've called them out separately in black versus red is that a good number of changes were already made throughout the body of this case from February until we were before you in July. And those are seen in the black. The dumpster locations, which were important for reducing noise and screening unsightly areas, were moved a distance of 50 feet from certain property lines. Building height was requested to be kind of brought down and measured throughout the site. The buffer was added between the apartments and the existing homes. Construction traffic that was expressed as a concern was met with a condition to prevent construction traffic in certain locations. And then discussing the Jordan Lutheran Church's ability to connect to utilities, a provision was made that would extend that. The three that you see on the bottom of the screen were additional requests that were made during the course of August that we were able to incorporate. We added an additional location for the construction traffic signage. We added a condition to construct a 6-foot privacy fence along the southern boundary of the site to help screen and also prevent some existing traffic or foot traffic that was occurring kind of bleeding over from the property to the existing neighborhood and discourage that type of movement, which was met with a very positive response. We added the PUD restriction that the southern portion of the Sherry property would only be single-family detached, and there was a lot of discussion about what the future of that home could be. And the answer is, under these new conditions, that it would be restricted to a single-family home. We didn't increase the number of units. We just kept that as a single-family home and made sure that either somebody could live there going forward as it is today, or when the time is right for the area to redevelop, it could redevelop in a more holistic way. And that was at the request of the feedback that we'd heard from the neighbors. As for building height and transition, we added another transition, or another height, that area C will be limited to a maximum of 3 stories. And it's best to illustrate that in this overall graphic here. We showed this graphic or a version of it during that first neighborhood meeting and said, now that we're able to add this Bishop property, what are the preferences? Do we want to keep buildings kind of screened up toward the north, toward the shopping center, or do we want to spread height out? And we heard directly from residents that they'd really like to see a 3-story height limit to kind of spread the height out on that area C. And so we went back and figured out how to do that and kind of moving the areas around. Again, not increasing units, but kind of moving the height in an area to make more use of the Bishop property. This also illustrates a 6-foot fence along the southern boundary, you can see in yellow, and the existing Sherry property to remain. Shelley did a great job in summarizing the additional connectivity that's provided now that we're able to add the Bishop property with sidewalks to the north, and then of course still maintaining all of the connectivity that's throughout the Chapel Ridge Road and the extension. This just shows a graphic of that July 26th plan that was before you at the last council meeting and what the current plan allows. And as you can see, it really graphically expresses how much more complete and holistic this is once you're able to add the Bishop property in and then make the Sherry property restricted to single family, so it's more consistent with the existing property to the south. This shows the building heights that are resulting now that we've changed the designation for the area C, which is in that center area there, to be limited to 3 stories. So we have a nice transition from the highest intensity use to the north, which is the shopping center, down to the 4-story multifamily apartments, then the 3-story multifamily, and of course down into the existing homes. And what you have then is a real sensible transition, both from north to south and from west to east, of how those transitions, both in use, height, and intensity, should work. And so, in short, the town gets a fix to each of the 3 issues that they asked us to correct in July: the addition of the Bishop property, the clarification of the Sherry property, and the response to the neighbor requests. But they also get all of the other commitments that have been important to this case and important to this town over the last 3 years. They get the 370 new homes to add to the meaningful supply that we need to provide housing for folks moving to the town. They provide commitments to high-quality architectural materials. So not only are we providing 370 new homes, but we're providing them with quality materials that match the existing aesthetic within the town. And then on top of that, roughly half of those homes will be one-bedroom homes, which add to a further kind of diversity of product that we don't have in the town today, naturally keeping prices of a little more variety and adding another type of product that's more affordable, attainable for folks to move into our town and have somewhere reasonable to live. On top of that, you're also getting all of the environmental commitments that Shelley summarized, the increased stormwater protection, the full cutoff LED fixtures, a minimum of the 5% of the required parking spaces being EV charging stations. As you've seen, that's been a huge demand throughout North Carolina, and especially in our town, that will really help to meet the market demand, but also increase our commitment to environmental sensitivity. Shelley mentioned the variety of the plant species and diverse and native species that we've committed to, as well as committing to the meeting or exceeding the RCA areas, the green building standards, and the solar conduit. So 11 of those EAB commitments that were requested are also going to be incorporated in. And not only are we providing that existing additional housing product and the environmental commitments, but we're providing more affordable housing units than this town has seen in any project in recent memory. That's not only the minimum commitment of the 3.5% at 60% AMI for 10 years, but really the units that you're able to gain here is unlike any case that's been before this council. And usually when you have cases that are kind of demanding a lot of one kind of aspect or the other, you get the environmental, but you don't get the affordability. You get the road construction, but you don't get the right product. This case really bakes in everything and gives you all of the things that you asked for in July, plus the affordable housing commitment that's significant. So again, that'll be about 13 units, and the commitment will be about this number here, about the 60% is about 45,000 per year. So that's a significant new type of product that the town hasn't seen, and really it gives the town a way to set an incremental standard that other people can emulate. By approving this case, you're setting a new bar in Apex. You can show this case to other applicants and say, this is really the combination of things we need to fix the housing issues in our town and provide the right type of product on the right standard. And so with this, we just kind of summarize the full case benefits here. In addition to the 370 apartment units and the affordability, we're also providing 10 to 15 accessible units, which means units that have higher counter areas, wider door swings. They have additional alarms for folks that have disabilities and might not hear a traditional fire alarm. Again, a new type of product and something that we're offering in connection with everything else that you're already getting. The addition of the connection, to kind of respond to one of the points that was made, in addition to it being provided in the near term, it's saving the town money by extending the Chapel Ridge north to Beaver Creek in a way that would take $2 million of cost off of the town if this were otherwise to be a capital improvement project. And the reason that's significant is that with this increased kind of walkability and traffic, providing the new not only sidewalk but side paths and the vehicular connection provides a new method of mobility, the new route, of course, for the transit if that is approved, and does so on the cost of this project while still being able to provide affordable units. The reason that's important now is that we have been able to negotiate a deal with the northern owner of the property, the commercial shopping center, which changed hands during the course of this case. And the deal that we were able to reach with them provides for the easement, allows that full extension. If this case were not to be approved, that would have to be renegotiated, and there's no guarantee, of course, that that property owner would be willing to enter into that arrangement again, or would be able to do so at a price that would still allow another developer to offer the environmental benefits, the affordable housing, and so on and so forth. So the summary of the case is staggering. There's no other case that offers the amount of units, the diversity, the type of environmental benefits, and the affordable housing that you're getting in this case, while still kind of offsetting the costs that you otherwise would have. This is the case that gives Apex the right type of product here. It gives you apartments in a way that's more affordable than single family or even townhomes would be. It gives you them in the right place where you're accessible to jobs, you're in walking distance of a variety and number of jobs, and you're on a transit route. It provides more connectivity for both vehicles and pedestrians, and it provides the right infrastructure in the right location. Zoning is a forward-looking process. It asks you to envision your future. And what we've done here is provided a future that this town can be proud of approving tonight that provides environmental sensitivity, affordability, accessibility, and attainability in a way that no other project has been before you. And for those reasons, it's reasonable and in the public interest, and we respectfully request your vote of approval tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Could you speak to the accessible units a little bit more, please?
Sure. So that was born out of a discussion we had earlier in the case of a lack of accessible units for folks that have some sort of disability and they're not able to rent regular apartments. And so what this would do is follow a standard that I think is still evolving in terms of how we would provide additional warning mechanisms, clearance, and kind of, for lack of a better word, walkability within the unit. And so it would follow a standard that we've committed to in the PUD that would provide designated units with that accessibility. You might see some units that have ADA accessibility kind of sprinkled throughout by code, but this would actually have designated units that meet that accessibility. So when we're looking for tenants and looking through applications that have that need, we can have designated units that already fit that criteria.
And did you say there's a certain number of units you were going to commit?
10 to 15
10 to 15, okay.
of the 370, yes.
And I believe you said there were 13 units that you were going to say were affordable based on the 60% AMI. Were you also saying that beyond that, you believe this development offers additional affordability? And if so, could you just restate that?
Sure. So what we're seeing now, and affordability, of course, is a problem throughout North Carolina and throughout the nation. And what we're seeing now is even varying the types of bedroom mix and providing either smaller number of bedrooms or smaller footprints is naturally having a impact on the price of units and kind of keeping them further down than other units that are kind of escalating, and certainly compared to larger square footages. And so when you're looking at kind of the commodities of scale, it's very common to have 2 and 3 bedrooms apartments. It's not as common as to have 1 bedroom, and we're seeing that based on the market in Apex. So even providing those 1 bedrooms that don't exist today, you're kind of providing a new product that's not in the market and provides a more affordable and attainable solution to housing.
So your explanation is by including about 50% 1 bedrooms, that makes the product or the project more affordable in some ways.
In some ways, yes. And I mean, of course, affordable has many different definitions, but I think our charge is to try to be creative in providing various ways, and we've done that in 2 different ways here.
So if this is approved, there'll be a sidewalk gap or side path gap to the south between this development and the townhomes that we approved at the end of Chapel Ridge, which I believe will simultaneously encourage more driving from those residents as well as unsafe walking along the road. And so, can you describe the nature of any discussions you guys have had internally or with the residents about addressing that gap in the future, or with this, or concerns that you guys may have with that gap remaining for who knows how long before redevelopment happens?
Sure. So there was a discussion at one of the believe the first neighborhood meetings about placing that sidewalk extension on areas that weren't included in the zoning and aren't part of the development. I think it's safe to say that there are residents within the development or within the overall area who are not ready to move on and want to retain their way of life. And so there was a question of kind of how that disruption would impact folks that are kind of having the sidewalk torn up on their property, even though they're not ready to develop, and would the right time for that development to be connected with when their actual property is developed. And so we did have that discussion. They expressed that today all of the walking is occurring in the road, and so even having the side path and sidewalks that we'll provide will take some pressure off of that, but it'll be on our property, and that was their desire, as we understand it.
So I guess it's a question between the desire to retain their entire property and the safety of people walking to and from the area, I guess. And it was that former that they thought was more important, I guess.
I think they weren't ready for change to their own property, if that's, if that's my understanding.
Thank you.
Can I ask you about the dogleg?
Sure.
What is the final status? Because that was another comment that I had at the last meeting. Road alignment seems suboptimal. Were there any additional discussions, or is this just the way it's going to be?
For how the road is going to curve through?
Yes, as opposed to a slight bend, maybe through the church property. Do you ask about the possibility of getting an easement from them?
We have been in discussions with the church. There's a significant amount of topo in this area, and we explored different entries onto Beaver Creek. Once we looked at their plans and talked with them about their needs and what their infrastructure needs would be, I think the decision between us and working with town staff was that having them access our road in this configuration was better for the topographic challenges, that also, not just topo, but then it causes some staging and constructability issues, and that this alignment was kind of the better of the two options.
Other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and open up public hearing for comments at this time. And I see, so we have the applicant, Josh Dix. Are you all together? Okay. Cody Trowbridge, Chopbridge, Kevin Dean, all together? They're on there for questions. Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure. All right, we'll call it Michael Merker. And you were speaking for 4 more people, correct, sir? That's correct. Okay. All right.
Let me count.
Yeah, you can check that we have the 4.
All right, you're good, you're good.
Thank you.
Trust but verify.
No, I understand. My name is Mike Merker, and I serve as the pastor at Jordan Lutheran Church, which owns 6.2 acres at 1201 Chapel Ridge Road. And tonight I speak to you on behalf of a congregation with members of the congregation present in the gallery who are at least counting more than 4. But I think what's important for you to remember about this congregation is that we represent over 200 people in the community who are teachers, doctors, engineers, professionals, members of the armed services. Some are even employees of the town of Apex. They are small business owners. They are retirees. They are children. Some here for civics lessons through the homeschools in which they are engaged. They want to be a part of Apex. I share with you as well, we joined Apex. We annexed into Apex for a desire to access wonderful things. Roads, sewer, and water. That is why I am here this evening. I am here to let you know that for over 13 years, the congregation has met at Beaver Creek Cinemas in the Beaver Creek Crossing shopping complex. We have worked with various businesses and others. For us to gather, we work with someone else. We understand the power of partnership, working with neighbors and members of the community to accomplish greater things. It is Jordan Lutheran Church's intention, though it does not seem true yet, we intend to develop 1201 Chapel Ridge Road in Apex. The timing to be determined. But our goal is to be a positive part of this city. And what became clear in this case as things moved is we needed to talk to people to get the case right, to get the best possible outcome. Jordan Lutheran Church will have its entire northern, eastern, and southern boundaries enveloped by the proposed rezoning case, and for that reason, we speak to you about the impact. No other property owner has more linear feet in the game than we do. It is why we are here to talk to you tonight. When Jordan Lutheran Church created a previous construction plan that was submitted and approved by the town of Apex, there was no knowledge of this case. This rezoning changed all of our plans. We dialogued with the developer who has put forward the case here to discuss areas of concern as they related to town of Apex infrastructure reasons, which is why we annexed in to get roads, water, and sewer. I had no idea how important those would be. But it turns out we cannot use our site until those things are met. So we come to you, the council, to talk to you about roads, sewer, and water. So regarding the road connection, the proposed rezoning creates a new public right-of-way along the entire northern and eastern boundary of Jordan Lutheran's property. Councilman Mahaffey, to your question that was raised in July 26th as well, it is for that reason I invited the entire council to come out to personally see the topography that is there, to understand the depth of the road, because if you haven't seen it, it's very hard to hear and see a two-dimensional drawing until you physically see the change there. Jordan was required in our original submission to move the road down the road to a place that cost more money to align to something that the town wanted. The developer is proposing to move that back to the north, which is where we tried to go originally, because it makes the most sense. And it is actually the most efficient. Again, for that reason, it is why we reached out to you. We wanted you to see it. Several council members did indeed take up that offer, and I shared with all of you the same information. It was our desire to make sure that all had equal opportunity to hear and to see. For our congregation, the placement as designed does mean less land disruption on our site. Jordan Lutheran Church, in a revised submission, would plan to access Chapel Ridge Road rather than a second entrance on Beaver Creek Commons Drive, reducing connections on a larger Apex-maintained road. I have for years worked with town staff and learned a whole lot about the desire originally, please connect to Beaver Creek Commons Drive. Chapel Ridge on the portions where originally is a DOT-maintained road. I've learned that complicates things. That's about the extent of my knowledge of it, but I know it complicates things. Sidewalks and the extension of a 10-foot greenway path throughout the site will ease concerns about walking in the neighborhood. A bus route will be provided as part of the case located on the eastern boundary of Jordan, sharing with the proposed rezoning. It is my understanding, and I'm more than willing to be corrected, the bus station that is on our side of the property puts a bus station on one side of the road. The bus terminal is on the other side, is on the opposite side of the road. So it would be my understanding, for safety reasons, since the bus does not have people crossing into traffic, that is why stations are located on opposite sides. That location is detailed in the PUD request that is submitted to you and locates that on Jordan's kind of side, if you will. A church that is told that they have a bus route on their property is a wonderful thing. Strangely, we hope you extend it, anyone guess? To Sunday service. We would love to see that. So my church sits there going 6 days a week, all right. And I know it had to start somewhere, I get that. But we're pulling for 7. The road connection also provides another exit for neighbors who have spoken in previous meetings before you to other subdivisions saying that it is challenging to exit onto Olive Chapel Road. To my knowledge, that has not been brought up recently, but I will let you know, I have a feeling people will take advantage of connectivity. I know that Apex, from the current mayor and the current town council and previous, said connectivity matters to this town, so that you have lots of options to get to different places. This plan increases connectivity. Now, since we've had fun with roads, we'll move to water and sewer. The water and sewer connections, the proposed rezoning places water and sewer connection in the public right-of-way. In that previous plan that Jordan had, it was proposed to put a 8-inch water line running straight across our property, bisecting it. That was to make sure that, again, any future property would have access to water. I have learned the town's whole purpose of all of this is to make sure that water and sewer and roads are available for the next person, which is very, very important. It is why we are here. But with this new rezoning case, it is possible to move that 8-inch line from cutting right through our property and put it in, I think, a better alignment. Put it in the road so that the town has access to it at any time that it needs. Certainly the town could have accessed that 8-inch line anytime it wanted. That easement was granted. But I do think the town might see a compelling case to realize if we can put it in the road, let's do that. Let's get it where it belongs. The project also interacts with the Beaver Creek Commons Gravity Sewer Extension, which is currently listed on the Town of Apex's budget for the present year. That project is listed at $1.4 million on the Town of Apex's website. That is a project that certainly is impacted immensely by what is taking place for the rezoning tonight. And I just want to make sure, as I've shared with council, to be aware we have a chance as taxpayers perhaps to realign how do we get these things at the right time. The developer also is providing a stub out to water and sewer, eases Jordan's future submittal, answering one of the major questions of how our congregation will access the public utilities. We spent the better part of nearly a year trying to work with the developer in the shopping complex to grant us 118 feet of space to get in to the water and sewer. And we were told, wait. We are coming to you to ask us, please give some clarity on this project so we can actually build. We just want to get road, water, and sewer. That's our ask. As annexed portion of the town of Apex, which is not true of everyone who is here. We're annexed and want to be part of you. We want to be with Apex, and we love being in Apex. Jordan Lutheran Church is here because the property impact on us is larger than most stakeholders because of the linear feet in which we share a border with the proposed rezoning. When Jordan Lutheran Church raised specific questions about the roadway connections, water, and sewer, the developer heard our concerns. They amended their rezoning case, and Jordan Lutheran Church looks forward to resubmitting our construction plans. Yet we recognize because of the impact this project had, we had to pause what we were doing. Our construction was completely paused to get this right, because we believe it is in the interest of the town to make sure that we have the best product for the town, the citizens, and others, so that 10 years from now, no one goes, why didn't your church talk to those people? Because you got two roads that are like 50 feet apart from each other, or whatever the specific designation would be. Again, I don't develop roads. Mayor Gilbert, members of the town council, I thank you. I thank you for inviting and encouraging neighbors and developers to have difficult conversations. These are not always fun. They are not always easy. But it is my experience from the July 26th meeting to this evening that we have a chance to get this project correct. As you, the town council, deliberate tonight, please consider the benefits this project presents related to connectivity, utilities, and infrastructure. And I want to close just saying these words. Thank you to Shelley Mayo, to Amanda, to all the town staff. I have learned a lot, and I will learn more. But we have a wonderful town staff who has to, each and every time after these meetings, adjust and pivot. I get it. Jordan Lutheran Church is adjusting and pivoting. But I'm grateful for those who are here. I look forward to talking to you on the phone again as we have opportunity to move forward. Jordan Lutheran Church speaks in favor of the rezoning case and the incorporated amendments which addressed our specific concerns. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend Merker. All right, Brian Grobeston.
I yielded my time.
All right, very well. Okay, BP?
I would reiterate that yielding.
Okay, sounds good. Ms. Rita Borkin.
Good evening once again. My name is Rita Boykin. Ray and I live at 1500 Clark Farm Road in Apex. In May of 2016, 6 years ago, the Apex Planning Board and the Planning Department were in unanimous agreement that the proposal for Olive Chapel Professional Park be denied. After 4 postponements, 2 in July, a vote was finally taken in August. The Town Council approved the rezoning request 3-2 against the unanimous recommendation of planning. Offices instead of homes were built on that property has played an instrumental part as to why we are here today. Because decisions can have unintended consequences. And in our case, decisions made during the last 15 years, in particular that fateful vote by the then Town Council, changes and uncertainty have been at the forefront of our neighborhood, causing even more decisions that have changed and are seeking to further change Chapel Ridge. Ackerman Hill Drive, Flex 540, Olive Chapel Professional Park, Bob Dumas selling his property to the Lutheran Church, John Gazarowski buying Jim Oberlander's property and the neighborhood never knowing his intentions for that property. These changes have resulted in uncertainty, causing some of our neighbors to band together to sell to developers. Unintended consequences. You are in a position to prevent further changes to Chapel Ridge by denying this PUD proposal, not just because it would forever change our neighborhood, but it is truly the wrong project for Chapel Ridge. Allowing the 2045 land use map to change that area from medium density residential to high density from what is now rural residential would be a travesty. We realize that one day all of Chapel Ridge will likely be redeveloped, but far better to develop the properties now remaining at one time with a better vision, a better proposal, rather than the piecemeal option being presented to you this evening. This proposal does not meet the 2045 land use map's medium density designation, so denying it will not generate a lawsuit. There are still unknowns concerning this project. What the finished project would look like, uncertainty with the Sherry property, and continued concerns of traffic and safety. They talk about affordability, but she never told you what the rent would be for all the apartments. She danced around it the whole time. Another unknown. We have been meeting with Apex officials, including each of you, since February. I'm talking for more than.
Go ahead, proceed.
Okay. We have been meeting with Apex officials, including each of you, since February, presenting our concerns and opposition for this proposal. You know what is at stake. This developer's proposal will devastate Chapel Ridge, which is why it matters so much to my neighbors and Ray and me. The potential for future development of these 45-plus combined acres is far greater than this proposal, which would only further divide our neighborhood into piecemeal portions. I do not know where each of you live, in a house or an apartment, but please take a moment to sit here and honestly envision this high-density project right next to where you live. 3- and 4-story apartment buildings with parking lots literally next door. Would you be in favor of it, or would you be standing where I am today? The Apex Planning Board voted against this proposal. We sincerely hope that you will vote against it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boykin. All right, move now to Melinda Bussey. And you also have indicated you're speaking for more than 4. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Melinda, and I speak on behalf of myself and my spouse, James Sereno, and my parents, Dan and Nancy Corey, who cannot be here as well tonight. We all live at 1304 and 1301 Chapel Ridge Road, adjacent to the project at the south end, the east end of Chapel Ridge. A little nervous, sorry. I'd first like to thank Rita, who just spoke. She's done a tremendous amount of research on all of these proceedings, and we are in full agreement with the content that she presents. But I would like to come at this from just a different angle from where I'm going to come from. I would, and some of you might have heard something similar to this when I spoke before, but I would just like for you to just for a moment, just step out of your role that you're sitting in right now and just step into our shoes. Consider us more than just the landowners. We chose to move into Chapel Ridge because of 2 reasons, my husband and I. One reason was for the wonderful, quiet, peaceful, country-like atmosphere that it provided so that we could have our children grow there. But the main reason that I moved there is because I wanted to be across the street from my parents. Both of my parents have major health issues, including one of them has stage 4 uncurable cancer. And for me to be able to assist them in their ongoing care during these later years is my primary reason for being directly across the street from them. It's been a blessing for me to be able to do this, except for one exception, and that's this current proposal. With the high-density proposal, we're going to have a slow destruction that's been going on by having the Hempstead subdivision there already, but it's going to be a slow destruction of this peaceful country-like atmosphere that we've grown to love. That's why we chose to move there for that reason. That's why we've chosen to stay there for that reason. Neighbors and my own family want to live out the rest of their time there if they can, in an atmosphere that they've known to grow and love. This is why we purchased those homes in that area. We were told when the south end of our subdivision was to gain the now present Homestead townhomes that we would not be impacted by this. Hempstead is directly beside the area we're speaking of tonight, and the impact of Hempstead has been already very devastating to our community. There have been many more examples that I could give you, but with my time limit tonight, I'm just going to kind of keep it to the small point. We've heard earlier tonight some very emotional and current testimonies tonight about the pedestrian traffic that was happening over on Richardson Road, and that's what's happening in this subdivision already before we've even started this new growth. We are having people that are cutting through from Hempstead already through our subdivision. We anticipate that's going to happen. And when they're cutting through, they're doing this at very excessive speeds. So excessive that when either I'm walking over to my parents' house, taking walks in the subdivision, or even when we're driving, we're being run off the road sometimes for this. And no amount of sidewalks is going to help that speed demons that are coming through there. There hasn't been discussions with us with this particular project for sidewalks or anything coming through ours because they don't own that part of the land, so that hasn't been an option for us yet. But I ask you, when you have that type of traffic in your own subdivision, if you're taking a walk with your kids or your dogs, or whoever you're taking a walk with, how do you feel when someone comes speeding past you, whether you're on a sidewalk or not? We're on a sidewalk, and we're still having this problem. In just the last couple of months alone, residents from these same townhouses have entered our private yards. They've picked apples from our trees, took pictures, and touched our Halloween decorations that are clearly 30 to 40 feet inside of our yards, coming on to our property without our permission. We expect that this type of behavior is going to continue with more people and more traffic that's going to come through. But I ask you, would you want someone coming into your yard and picking your flowers? You know, you're taking your fruits, touching your decorations, having their dogs leave presents for you on the ground and not picking them up. These are the things that are occurring, and I am certain with the increase of 1,000 more people that will come with this high-density proposal that these behaviors will continue to multiply. I mean, these are our homes and our lives, and this is where we've chosen to live. And I don't think any of us would have moved in knowing that this was absolutely going to happen someday. We chose to live here many years ago because of this environment, and now others are choosing for us what type of environment we're going to live in. Where it's kind of like dismissing our rights. If we wanted to live in the city, we would have not moved into this subdivision that we're in. We would have moved into the city. We wanted to live where we are, and we feel like this is kind of being forced on us. Who is going to protect us and our rights? And we're imploring you to do that tonight. I almost feel like it's my house is burning down and I have no one helping me to bring water. I'm watching the destruction of my house and there's nothing I can do about it. I just want you to put yourselves in our shoes for a moment. The speeding, the increase in the traffic, the property violations, would you want this for your own families? Please keep our community at the original medium density plan. We just want what was normally planned so that we can salvage as many or as much of that peaceful environment that we've had for the last 30 years. We know we're going to have some loss of integrity, whether it's medium or high, we know that, but how much is going to be up to you tonight? This project could still continue with medium density, and we implore you to vote for medium density tonight. Well, thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike Mohan. Yes, you're speaking for 4 more people.
Yes, I'm speaking for the Chapel Ridge North folks in the back here, in the back corner.
All right, very well. Thank you so much.
Mike Mohan, I'm at 1204 Chapel Ridge Road, and I'm here to speak for Chapel Ridge North. I hope you all saw my email. I gave you kind of a quick synopsis of where we've been. You've heard about a lot of the changes and stuff that's happened over the years. Yes, it was a nice, quiet neighborhood before 540, before Beaver Creek, before Hempstead, before the park that's out there now, right? The business park out there. It's changed. It's changed a lot. You know, we started down this path probably 4 years ago or so, right? Once they started to get Hempstead done, we started getting contacted by developers, right? And they came in, and the first hawks came in, right, and tried to make a quick buck, tried to come in and you know, make everybody a quick offer and get it out there, right? And we turned it down. The next guys came in and they made a little bit different offer, you know, and they wanted to come in, they couldn't, but you know, you've heard all the different issues that are here, right? The roads was the big thing, right? You had to have a connection before you could get the densities, and I'm not a planner, so we took it after that, and we took it on our own initiative to come, you know, we talked as neighbors and said, yep, we probably should get together, find somebody that can represent us, go to the town, find out what's gonna work for everybody, and then take it to the marketplace to find if we could get a developer. That's what we did, right? And that was over 1.5 years or so ago on that. You all have seen the plans. You all have had more discussion probably than you ever wanted to have about Chapel Ridge. But, you know, we've worked with the town, we've worked with the developers, we've worked with everybody that we can think of to come up with this final plan here. So we encourage you to support it. I don't know if there's anything else that we can do. You know, we've done everything that we can in our power. Understand that some of the neighbors, they want to stay, right? And I mean, that's their privilege if they wanted to stay. The front neighbors, they banded together and they went ahead and sold their property up out there, right? We know that, you know, Chapel Ridge is under pressure for, you know, redevelopment. So I think that this is the best plan. It's the best plan for Apex. You know, the developer has done great. Shelley has been wonderful to work with. We've worked with all the town folks, you know, where we could go and how we could get the road in and get the connectivity. And, you know, I know you all are in a tough situation now and you got to make a tough decision, but we firmly support this. So please, give it a yay. Thank you. Have a good night. I'll answer any questions. No?
Thank you, Mr. Mohan. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
All right, final speaker, Phil Welch.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Phil Welch. I live at 1471 Big Leaf Loop in Apex. I chair the Western Region Affordable Housing Action Group's advocacy team. I also participated in 2020 on the steering committee that helped to put together the Apex's affordable housing plan. So just to be clear, I'm commenting on rezoning number 22CZ07, the Chapel Ridge North PUD. By way of background, the housing needs assessment in the affordable housing plan showed a gap of nearly 2,000 rental housing units in Apex in 2018 for households earning less than $40,000. With the economic stress of the COVID pandemic and annual rent increases approaching double digits in the years since 2018, it's safe to assume that this gap is now well above 2,000 units. In addition, the Affordable Housing Plan stated that over the next decade, Apex is projected to add 1,900 jobs with incomes below $75,000, which will further contribute to the town's affordable housing need. Based on the ever-increasing demand for affordable rental homes here, I'd recommend that town staff reevaluate the 3.5% commitment for affordable apartments in the Chapel Ridge North PUD. The draft Affordable Housing Incentive Zoning Procedures manual that the Housing Advisory Board has been working on recommends that developers be incentivized to provide at least 5% affordable units in developments this size. I would submit that if Apex is to fill these affordable housing gaps in the next 10 years, we probably need to offer developer incentives to provide at least 10% affordable units. I know that's not going to be a popular statement, but I think that's realistic. In addition, the draft Affordable Housing Incentive Zoning Procedures Manual recommends a minimum affordability term of 20 years versus the 10 years in this rezoning. I would strongly suggest that town staff revisit the current 10-year term and offer incentives to increase that term to 20 years. Otherwise, the gap that is filled by these affordable units will reappear again after 10 years. On the positive side, I'm encouraged to see that the affordable units will be provided for households earning up to 60% of AMI. For a family of 4 in 2022, this year, that would be about $64,000 in annual earnings. Depending on a household's number of wage earners and their jobs, this has the potential to cover many of Apex's essential workers. Finally, I have pointed out to town staff that if the Housing Advisory Board is included in pre-application reviews, we would be able to provide comments and advice well before the last days preceding a rezoning hearing. This would also be consistent with the participation of the Environmental Advisory Board in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. And that closes out public hearing for comments. And we move now, with all that information, to discussion. A lot of information to take in from July to now. And it's time we discuss both items, leading to a possible motion.
Mayor, prior to our discussion, I had a question for the pastor, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Pastor
Okay.
Merker?
By the way, as you're coming up, you had a golden chance to make a joke about roads, sewer, and water being like some kind of new holy trinity, but that's just something going through my head. Anyway, in the previous, thank you. In the previous meeting we had, it appeared you had kind of, I would say, lukewarm support is how I perceived it, and obviously your members weren't there in the audience. So, is the more strong support you have now based on discussions between that meeting and now?
When you say support, define what support means.
I think you said you support, or you want us to vote to affirm the rezoning, and it was kind of lukewarm, I thought, last.
No, that's fine. I guess what I think is important, and I'm asking for you to define support, is as the church, our position is we are a landholder that shares a property line with Trammell Crow. I mean, to be direct with you, I have spoken with Trammell Crow, so this will not surprise them. We are completely separate from Trammell Crow. We are our own incorporated entity, and we are not them, they are not us. But we spoke to them, and they were willing to help bring what you, I think, would, at least my seminary professor would say, an unholy trinity. So just, if my seminary profs are listening, I have to get that out there. But they listened and they amended. So when I say we support, that's why I was very articulate or attempted to be in my speaking. What we support is their listening and amending so that we can do something better individually. Because at the end of the day, they're going to build apartments, and we're really looking forward to worshiping the God as we have come to know him on our site. And so they're two separate things. So to say I support the amendments and what they're doing because we found a place to work together, which I know the mayor, you were super passionate about, which is why all these conversations happened since July and even the meeting in August. I mean, I'll share with you, if you don't go to some of the actual meetings, like on the 22nd, there's some breakthroughs on the 22nd. And the breakthrough is this is painful, very painful for people. To watch what's happening. So when I say support, I support the amendments and where we can work together, but at the end of the day, they have their own desires for their property, and Jordan has its own.
Okay, yeah, so to clarify, I guess there was productive conversations between when we last saw you at the last rezoning and now, during that time period, that maybe was reflective of the folks being here and...
Yeah, I mean, from July 22nd when we last met, Jordan's position has remained the same. What I would say changed is they had more conversations with neighbors that I witnessed on the 22nd of August at Hempstead, as many neighbors at Hempstead were present and spoke. And then there were other conversations with Chapel Ridge of which I heard, and they were not easy conversations. I don't want to push them under the table by any means. This is very painful what is happening to people because it is their life and it is their property. So for the congregation, our view is largely the same because we were heard when we asked, and I think this is important, when we asked very specific questions. When we ask pointed, we need water sewer. If your project goes forward without us, we will not know how to get it. Because of the capital improvement project in Beaver Creek Greenways, it would be a huge challenge. They heard us and said, oh, well, we think we can do it. And the difference is we asked and they said, oh, we can fix that. When it came to the town, we had to wait. It's a capital improvement project. In 2018, when we started our dialogue, we had a conversation with water. I mean, I will share. We came in 2018, and in doing that, the first person we met with was your water department. And we went with multiple staff people, and we said, we cannot purchase this property unless we can get water and sewer. And they said, yeah, we think that can happen. And then I shared with some council members, as people got promoted, because you have wonderful staff and they got different positions, those people got promoted, and the memory of what we were told we could get changed. And the capital improvement project went from 2018 to 2019 to 2020 to 2021 to 2022. So as a taxpayer, I sit there going, boy, if you can get somebody to do some of your capital improvement, there's a lot of needs. There's so many other things. That's where when I say, do I support the amendments. I'm excited for low-income housing. I've learned a whole lot more. I mean, I met Phil Welch just because we discovered that we have some mutual agreed things, that we think people should have a place to live. And I can't wait to learn more. So these are the neat conversations that this has allowed me. Did I think I'd learn more about low-income housing in this process? No, but I'm better for it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I had a question for the developer team. In terms of, I know we've got 3-story, 4-story, and 5-story, but I'm assuming because of the topography of the land, the sight line will be similar. Is that right? In terms of
the roof line? Yes, so the only area that would be 5 is kind of in this area because the topography slopes down. So in general, what you'd be seeing is a 4-story product, except for here, which would be the 3. So it's working with the topography.
And given what Mr. Welch said about affordability, I know that puts you all on the spot a bit. Do you have a comment about that, or is it possible to make things even more affordable for this project?
I do have a comment about that. I think it's wonderful to have a plan for affordability, and the process that Apex is going through right now makes all the sense in the world. For this project, this is a monumental step that you haven't had from anyone else. And the way that you make change in development projects is incrementally. You don't set the bar as where you want to end up and have the first case come through and try to attain that high bar and fail. You set the bar and you slowly over time increase the bar, and more people say, oh, that's how you do it. High Street knows how to do affordable. I'll see how they did it. They know how to manage it. They've done it across the country. They know this model works. They have a pro forma that they've been able to run, and they've had to balance it with the cost of a $2 million road, with all of the cost of the environmental benefits, with the additional cost of accessibility and all these other things that we've talked about. And so their experience throughout the country and knowing what works is how we came to the 3.5%, in addition to, and I shouldn't undercut what the town staff did in order to work with us on their suggestions for affordability. And that 3.5% did come from the town's suggestion. It was originally at a 70% AMI, and then when the AMI numbers moved up this year, it was suggested to bring the AMI down to 60% because the 60% AMI was more important in the town staff view. And so we responded to the town staff. The staff person making those suggestions was also very knowledgeable about what works in making affordable housing work in individual plans and how you build it up over time. It's the same reason that you've seen both in Apex and other jurisdictions, somebody starts with an offer of a couple vehicle charging station, then it comes to 4, and then it comes to 6, or donation for affordable housing units that turn from a monetary donation into actual units a day in a very short time. You couldn't have come into Apex 2 years ago and said, give us 10% affordable housing, because nobody had done it and they didn't know how to do it. And so what you do is you take a project and you balance all of the other costs with somebody who knows how to run an affordable housing program and follow what the market will support. And then you have other market entrants that come and follow suit. So over time, I hope that Apex does get to a point where they can encourage that and directly incentivize it through voluntary zoning offers. That would be wonderful. But it would be a real shame to have the first project to offer this many units fail because we're looking to make the incredibly great the enemy of the perfect. We'll get to perfect, we'll get to a really great result with an affordable housing plan, but we shouldn't hold cases to a bar that is set, kind of as a future forward-looking that we aren't sure has a lot of models of working in Apex. We should follow the market experience of people who've done it throughout the country and know that the pro forma works. So we appreciate the feedback, but balancing all of the costs of this project and the other things that we've offered, this is where the offer has to stay, and it's an incredible offer.
You could lead the way even more.
Well, if this...
If you need a recess to talk with your team, we could probably grant that.
I think if this case is approved tonight, you'll see more people following suit.
Any more questions for the applicant? No, none. Okay. Thank you. right, so we have silence here. I understand this is a tough decision. We need to move in a direction. I will say this. I wasn't here for the July meeting, and I missed out, obviously. But I will say, I know there's been a lot of work done since July. A lot of people meeting at the table, having discussions, as Pastor Merker pointed out, and that's what I do enjoy seeing. We were kind of in this direction at that time, and now we're kind of close to where we want to be. I understand there's never going to be a perfect scenario, but I do believe we're closer than where we were before, even 4 years ago. So in that discussion, if we can kind of lean in that direction, that would be very helpful to me to get a better understanding of where you are.
Well, I can lead off by saying kind of where I'm at on this, and I think that this is a great example of the conversation that are just uncomfortable conversations. And I think as, you know, prior to being on town council, you recognize that there are uncomfortable conversations, but then when you're on town council, you recognize that this is nothing but uncomfortable conversations. And I say that, I mean, with all true candor, because I can't think of one thing that one of us hasn't had the vote for or against that directly impacts a neighbor, you know. And that, I say that because with that as a reminder, our job is to think more globally and think about the wider issue of Apex. You know, not only incorporating those things such as connectivity and transportation and our environmental desires and our affordable housing desires, but kind of what's the larger picture of what we want Apex to be. And many times that requires us to make decisions that are going to require uncomfortable conversations. So I want to say thank you to the applicant for having the courage to have those uncomfortable conversations. I know that you had at least 2 of them after the last meeting, and I think those were productive. Because I know, you know, based on the conversations that were taking place on that meeting on the 26th, it was very much a tone of, listen, we need you to go back and do right by the neighbors. Have that conversation and get them more involved. And to your credit, you did that. As you had that conversation, I think it's easy to recognize that we're not going to please everybody. I mean, that's why I say our default is to go back to having that conversation and figuring out what's big for Apex and what we're looking for in our long-term needs. Phil, I appreciate you being here because you're always, I like to call it the angel on my right shoulder who's talking about affordable housing. Keeping that in the forefront because it's a real problem. We all know of someone who lives in Apex, can't leave Apex because it's going to impact their family. We all know somebody who says, man, I'd love to live in Apex, but I can't afford it. We all know that, you know, a real serious problem that we have is just lack of affordable housing units, as well as rental units, as well as units in general. And it's not just an Apex problem. I recognize this is a problem everywhere, but I focus on Apex. And if there's a way that we can help address that problem, we should do that. And I do think it's a real step for the applicant to move down from a 75% AMI to a 60. I recognize that that was a give. I also recognize that when we ask for these things, we are taking money out of your pocket. But we do so knowing that as we're taking money out of your pocket, we're hopefully making things better for those within the community, and that makes a bigger difference. Another one of the things that really kind of drives my thought process on this is the transit plan. You know, I know that, and I know that this isn't easy because as we're talking about this, you know, I put myself into the shoes of Rita as I'm thinking about we're making a very real impact on someone's house. When they moved into Chapel Ridge, and I remember I tried to buy a house in Chapel Ridge, couldn't get it. Not going to talk about that now. But tell you that only to let you know that I love that community because it is a great community. It reminds me a lot of where I live right now. But with Chapel Ridge, when Rita and her family and many others moved there originally, it was literally out in the middle of nowhere. It really was. Over time, Beaver Creek, many other developments have sprung up around there, and I think the overall nature and character of what's around it is different. But it doesn't change the pain and the impact of those who are living there, because as they look at their home, they're seeing more and more things change around them, and I think that that is something that we all need to be cognizant of, and I certainly keep it in the forefront of my mind. But I also take a hard look at some of the things that we would be getting in a development like this. And that transportation plan is something that I don't take too lightly, because one of the things that I think about when I think about that bus, I know that there's maybe 3 riders on there, but I know one of them. And that person's a disabled veteran. And but for that bus being able to take her around to get groceries, get her prescriptions, get her to her doctor, and give her the opportunity to vote without me driving her there this year, we're making a real big impact on her. So I know that we were at 2.5 riders, and now we're at 3. I like to look at that positively. We're trending in the right directions. But I will say this every time. The idea that we will be able to create an environment where a disabled veteran will be able to live in a house that's affordable and be able to move around in that apartment without worrying about banging a wheelchair into the doors, will be able to get onto a bus and be able to get shopping done, and be able to contribute to this community, I won't apologize for that, ever. On balance, we don't get everything we want out of the developer. We don't. But I think on balance, when I look at what we are getting in terms of our environmental, transportation, affordable housing, number of units, and quite frankly, just the improvement of those who can contribute to this community, I can see on balance that this is a project that I can support. I know it severely impacts those families that are there, and if I had my way, yeah, I'd love to just wait till everybody was on the same page in that development, in that housing area, and have everybody sell at once. I know realistically that's probably not possible, not likely, or at least not within the next 10 to 15 years. We have real problems we've got to solve now. So I know this is tough, and I will be the first person to tell you, when this first came before the council, I wasn't enthusiastic about it. But, you know, as we started to see more things, reduction in the number of floors, I thought that was a big concession. I appreciate that. We started getting more emails in response and in support of this. To be clear, the number of emails is not dispositive with regard to how I feel about these projects, but it is informative. But I also want people to know very clearly that Rita Boykin is exactly the sort of community engagement that I really appreciate seeing. The time, the effort to talk to each one of us, to explain to us the history, what's taken place. It's invaluable, absolutely invaluable. And I really, really encourage others to take that on as an example of how to do things. But with that said, and I will be voting in support of this, I hope that High Street can also show itself to be the example for others that come in afterwards, so that when we do ask for the 60% AMI, we won't get as much of a struggle. When we ask for housing that is going to be built for accessibility, we won't get the resistance. And in the future, when you guys decide you're going to increase the amount of solar there, we'll be able to once again tout you guys as being on the forefront and exactly the sort of thing that we like to be able to see. So I look forward to being able to tell others that High Street is how you're supposed to do it. And if you want to know how to get it done with us, talk to them. I'm sure they'll share notes. So I have no problem with supporting this project.
Thank you, Councilman.
So in my thoughts on this, the original question on this comes back to the land use map. That is the original issue here. When this project first came to us and we first talked about the land use map, the community was together. The community came together and said, we would like for you to be medium density or lower, not high density, not medium high density. That's what we want. That was before the community kind of fractured a little bit in the idea of what they wanted to happen here. started selling off and projects started developing within this community. So when that happens, it made me reevaluate the density in this particular area. And honestly, I think apartments fits here. It's at the right location. It's at the right density. I also think about the public good or the public negative that we see with this type of project. Yes, it does change things a little bit, but I think it changes things in the direction that it should go. We're talking about environmental benefits. We're talking about accessibility, which is something we haven't seen in a project. Working with people with disabilities, that's big. We're talking about connectivity and a road and accessibility and water, sewer, and transportation that has been needed for a very long time in this area. We're talking about affordability that we haven't seen this many units before in a project like this. In the conversations that I originally had back in 2017, 2018 about affordability, I would get laughed at by any developer when I talked about affordable housing. Now we're getting it. We're getting actual units, not just money toward, but actual units being built, which is benefiting the community at very high rates. And I hope to see more and more of that to happen. The transit benefits in this area will not only maybe benefit the church in the future, if we expand the days, but also helps the people that may live in these apartments get around. And that's also big. So this project, in my opinion, it has my support. You've done the work that we've asked you to do. You've gone back, you've talked to people incorporating the things that we talked about as concerns, the Bishop property and these types of things. So I appreciate the hard work that went into this, the uncomfortable conversations that have been had. So the project has my support.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
So, lots been said. Talked a lot about the benefits, the work that's gone into this, been going on for months, year and a half now. What I'm thinking about right now is our credibility, my credibility of this council, for the policies and the beliefs we say that we have. For when we sit in a council meeting like we did a couple months ago and enumerate a bunch of things that we think would make this project better. And they come back and they do all of them. Our credibility comes down to we can't keep moving the goalposts. And one example is the 10% housing. It'd be wonderful if they offered 10% housing. We didn't bring that up last time. And if every time someone comes before us, we ask for a list of things, and they come back and they do them all, and then we ask for another list of things, at a certain point, people are going to start wondering, what's the point of doing what they're asking? Why do we fulfill? What's the point of this conversation if it's just going to be one more thing forever? So I'd ask that we all think about that as well. Like, we do have a responsibility to provide consistent, clear direction as to what we think the land use of something should be. And if we don't support something, provide clear direction as to what would lend our support to it, what would need to be changed. And if people do those things, then we have to stand behind our word. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Councilman. I guess we're going down the line here. First of all, I'm wondering now who's on Councilman Gray's left shoulder as the devil. You got me intrigued.
You've hit your limit of 3 church puns.
That was just 2 then, right? Okay. Anyway, I'm a numbers guy, and so I made a list: pro and con, Apex, and Chapel Ridge. The pro for Chapel Ridge was the landowners we heard from can sell their land like they want to in this particular development. The con for Apex, I put current school capacity and green space reduction. So those are the short list. There was a long list of cons for Chapel Ridge. I don't think a little bit's right. I mean, my neighborhood had a bridge that's going to go in our backyard. We fought that every single time, and we still hate it. And I don't think it's just a little bit. I think it's actually a major disruption. And there are some other cons about road traffic and speed, all that. But the pros for Apex were much more numerous. A lot of it was related to the church improvements, the Trinity there, Unholy Trinity, but also affordable housing and, there are things like the housing mixture. I mean, if we did medium density, it would be townhomes. We have a lot of townhomes, and we have a lot of single-family homes in Apex, like a lot. I think this adds to the mixture in a much better way, personally. I said the rezoning is clustered. I think that getting 8 together like this may not happen again, frankly. I think they may sell individually, and then we have a kind of a scattershot development that goes forward, which I think would be a shame. So I'm in support.
Thank you, Councilman.
Okay. Well, thank you all for being here, first of all, for all of you showing up, and for the difficult conversations that we've had. And I've had some good conversations with several of you in the room, and I just appreciate the fact that you have stayed engaged. And I think the project is better, and I do appreciate the work the developer has done, that when you all went back to try to talk, it's not going to be perfect, and I know everyone's not going to get what they want, but I do appreciate the positive benefits that I feel like we've made in terms of accessibility, connectivity, the transportation issues, the Bishop and the Sherry property, and even my nod to Mr. Welch, and I hear you, Councilmember Happy, on that. If we don't continue to have the conversations and push the envelope, we won't get more, and that's what I want us to continue to work on, and I appreciate you at least hearing that as we continue to work on improving housing affordability, because we do. But I appreciate the work that you have. I appreciate what you're offering with this project. So I will support this project as well. One thing I would like to say, though, one piece I heard that I'd like to challenge the church maybe on, or to ask your help for, is building community, because I know this has been a really, this parcel of land, these parcels of land has a really difficult checkered history, and I think several of us know that. There's been a lot of pain and heartache because of that. Decisions that were made before I was, on the council, of course, but we get handed things that we have to, deal with what we are given, and to try to make the best that we can in terms of thinking about Apex and the collective good. But the fracturedness in the history of this has created maybe some isolation, some feelings of hurt and pain. And given that a church is going to be coming into this area, I just invite you to take that mantle up, because churches build community. And I know, I believe that's what you all will do, to just continue to reach out to neighbors and do as much as you can do to build community, to make Apex the peak of good living. Okay, so thank you.
Well done. Thank you.
I will make a motion to approve.
Motion, Mayor Pro Tem, to approve.
Second.
Second, Gray.
And that's the transportation plan and the rezoning,
Both.
correct? Okay.
Yes.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone.
Are we done?
We got one more.
Okay. Oh, we got it.
Yeah.
And we,
Gavel.
yeah.
Excuse me, we need to get back to more business, so if you could head out so we can hear each other. Thank you all so much.
I'll talk to you.
Yeah, we're still in session.
All right, we'll go ahead and call up. Are you ready? You good? All right. Public hearing 3, rezoning case. 22 CZ09. Is that you presenting tonight? Asking for a continuance.
That's what I told him the week after.
Yeah.
They're not gonna give it. Yeah, but do you want it to go one after the next?
Right.
Let's do that.
Yeah, we're just gonna continue it. We just need a motion to continue?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. They're not getting up. Okay, all
Let me do
right.
that.
Is there a motion to continue?
I move we continue this hearing to November the 8th.
All right, motion by Hafford.
Second.
Second, Gray.
Point of order, that is election night. We tried to avoid that, but this one year has the weird Tuesday after the first Monday, whatever it is, that falls poorly. So potentially, are we amenable to moving it to the next one after that? Can we do that?
To the 29th?
Oh.
Is that gonna, is that? Yeah.
Oh, that's complicated.
Can we move to amend our previous decision for setting the agenda? Right?
Or they can move to amend that decision, right?
So last meeting, you set the public hearing, is that right, Diana?
On the consent today, I thought.
Consent today.
No, the annex, oh, on consent. Is on consent
Oh, I
today?
should have.
Yes. you
Should have
should.
caught that.
It's
Well,
a motion to
it
reconsider.
happens that way.
That particular item.
You desire?
It's, how, what's the agenda like on November the 8th?
Busy?
No, there's consent items, but we have, well, yeah, there's 4 public hearings right now.
On the 8th?
Yep.
Oh. Well, then it doesn't matter then, I guess, right? I think it's too complicated, and we just
Proceed.
go forward.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Got motion, second. Any further discussion on it? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passed unanimously. Moving now to updates. Manager Crosby.
No updates.
No updates. Excellent. All right, cool. Any other business? Hearing none. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all. Good job.